And we are live. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Friday's The Slate. Gary and I are both here. We've alternated hosting. So I got a little confused for a sec who was actually going to be leading this, but I guess it's me for now. But we're going to go back and forth and go through all of the baseball things for tonight, DFS, sports betting, plenty to get to. It seems like every time we're on together, every single team is playing. And we've got these crazy big slates, usually a Coors game to talk about too. So plenty to cover. And I guess welcome, Garion. And where do you want to start? What should we get into first?
I don't know. I guess we can maybe break down some DFS quickly, and we'll move over to the sports book. I know, heck, I've even been writing up like home run derby props and stuff. I know we got some of that coming out today, so we can really go anywhere we want to go. But yeah, let's maybe start with like the top of the pitching slate. I feel like that's the pretty generic place to go for these shows, but it's probably the thing people are interested in.
Yeah, I feel like this is maybe this has been just a thing recently where the slates either have no good pitching or a ton of good pitching. And tonight is one of the ones where we just have a ton of good options. So we have Woodruff, we have Ray, we have Kershaw, Manoah, all in really good spots. Darvish is in a good spot. And then there's a big drop off, but we have really five elite pitching choices, all pretty good pitchers and then good matchups also. So what do we I've been looking at this for a while today, and I have a very hard time differentiating. I don't usually love Kershaw for DFS, but if he's a little less popular than, let's say, Robbie Ray, then fading a high-owned Robbie Ray always feels like the right thing to do. But do you have any, I don't know, more concrete thoughts here? Because I feel like you can kind of go in any direction with the top end, and then the decisions are more on offense.
Yeah. I mean, this is a particularly weird slate because I don't think there's a lot of obvious value situations to go to for pitchers either. I mean, there's a couple guys in maybe the 7K range that are a little bit enticing, but you might get a lot of people trying to build lineups with two of the more moderately priced of these five guys, which makes my first thought maybe Brandon Woodruff is going to be the odd man out of these five guys. I think that, not that there's that much stink attached to Brandon Woodruff's name, but did struggle a bit early in the season, burned some people, went on the IL, so kind of disappeared from the eye for a little bit. There's a perception that the Giants are a fantastic offensive team just because they won so many games last season. And they're not bad. And I would say they're particularly better against right-handed pitchers than they are against left-handed pitchers because a lot of their best bats, Jock Peterson, Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford, etc., are left-handed. But, this is a San Francisco team that's, I believe, has the 7th highest strikeout rate in baseball in the month of July. And Woodruff's the only one of these five above 10K. So I do think he might be the one that people kind of gloss over and maybe focus more on this Kershaw, Manoah, Darvish tier, where you can realistically kind of put two of those three guys into the same lineup and then try to find some value. So not saying Woodruff is going to be the best of these five, but I do think if we're trying to think about the variance play here, it probably is going to end up being Woodruff.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's hard to disagree with that. And Burns was just really good against the Giants too. I've been kind of beating this drum also for a little while now. The Giants offense is pretty overrated. The team as a whole is just struggling. So not the hardest of matchups. And then also going into the park upgrade for a pitcher, I guess it's more of a pitcher park in San Francisco. Milwaukee's not a terrible place to pitch, but San Francisco's
average,
a bit easier. And then we've got really cheap hitters in this Coors game. So for that reason, too, it's just going to be easy to play some of these expensive guys. Coors pricing lately has been kind of wild. We had a recent slate with the Padres where Manny Machado was the only hitter in the opposing lineup over 5K. It was only 5,100. And then there were several guys in the 3,000s. And then Eric Hosmer was in the 2,000s. We've got a couple guys in this Pirates lineup tonight that are the flat minimum with, I think because Jack Sawinski got sent down, we have Cal Mitchell playing. He's at $2,000. Let me just pull this lineup up here so we can see it. It sets up to be so chalky sometimes where you've got just good pitching choices at the top and then a lineup where it's so easy to fit with it and everyone's just going to do the same thing. So yeah, O'Neal Cruz is the most expensive active Pirates hitter at $4,100 against German Marquez.
Yeah.
And then we've got Van Meter leading off 2,900. We've got, I think we have Marisnik in the starting lineup and Cal Mitchell in the starting lineup who are $2,000.
Yeah. Who's catching for them tonight, out of curiosity?
See, maybe I need to refresh this so we could get our green check marks to show up again. And that's
well, I know their lineup would have just come out if it
right.
has in fact come out. So
here we go.
Oh yeah, it came out like 13 minutes ago.
All right, we have Jason DeLay catching at $2,400.
Right, fake Jason Bay. Okay, so that's I feel like he's going to be a popular sort of punt to the catcher position as well. Yeah, look, I think a lot of people are going to be on the Pirates. You know, it's in a vacuum. It's easy to see why. Obviously, you've got the Coors effect. You know, in particular, German Marquez has been just awful at home this season, an ERA up over 7. He's also kind of an interesting guy in the sense that, you know, a lot of pitchers have these sort of, they're through the lineup splits. They get worse as they work deeper into the game. That's almost every pitcher in baseball. He's the opposite. He has his worst, he's given up the most runs and has his worst ERA the first time through, then gets progressively better. So maybe just bet like Pirates first 5 over 2.5 if you really want to attack this game. But I just, this could go so wrong. I feel like anytime you're going into a slate and the general consensus is, oh, the Pirates are the top stack tonight, that's just a good time to like not do that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm generally in favor of fading any team at Coors that's popular. Like, yes, it's easier to hit there by a significant margin, but even when it's a good team, like usually you get such concentrated ownership that no matter how good they are, it's probably worth looking elsewhere. In this particular case, it's the Pirates. Like they're bad. So
they're not great.
This is not the Padres. This is not the Dodgers. We've seen those teams bust at Coors Field. It would not be shocking to anyone to see the Pirates not do well in any spot. I mean, they're just not a very good offense. And we don't have Brian Reynolds. Jack Sawinski was arguably their best hitter over the last month, and now he's down to the minors. So it's not like this is a good lineup. They're just really, really cheap, and it's easy to fit them. I'm probably – I want to look elsewhere and play – I mean, this is very common analysis from me, is just playing cheaper pitching with more expensive hitting, just because that's the easiest way to get contrarian on a slate where everyone's doing the opposite. So the guy that I'm not sure how many people are really going to play him, but Zach Plesac is in a really good spot. He's $7,200 and he's facing a pretty terrible Tigers offense at home. His recent performance is like, it's not that bad. Like he's coming off 2 mediocre starts, and prior to that, 2 great starts, both against the Twins. Is basically just an average pitcher, right? Who's well underpriced just for the matchup that he's in. And I think ordinarily you'd see like $7,200 decent pitcher at home against a bad team. Like that's a very obvious and appealing spot. But because of the 5 pitchers that we've already been talking about, it's not like Plesac will be totally unowned, but he could be 10%, 15%, 20% at most. I think he'll come in below all these other guys because it's only like 2,000 or 3,000 more to play some of these elite arms. And Plesac is not, he's like just the right amount of a discount, if that makes sense, where it's worth having him, but he's not so cheap that everyone's going to do it.
No, I agree. And I think, like I mentioned, once you get below 7K on this particular slate, you know, you can pretty much say this all the time, but it gets really dicey.
There's one guy I like, and I'm sure you can guess who it is, but yes, I agree. In general,
I probably can. But I do think Plesac's in a really nice spot. And I also think he's almost the exact sort of opposite play of the kind of guy who I think is actually going to be not the chalk in this tier, because again, I do think people are just going to end up trying to pay up for 2 of those 5 guys. But I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards Hunter Green just because they know the strikeout upside is there. It's an upside play. You can kind of just say, I know the numbers are bad, but the stuff's great. He's got the ability to strike out 10 guys. Maybe he puts it together tonight, and maybe he does. But the Cardinals, good offensive team, even if they haven't shown it in the last week or so. I know Juan Yepez just went on the IL, so that does weaken that lineup a little bit more than even their underwhelming numbers from the past week have shown. But, you know, Green is also 3 home runs waiting to happen. So I think Plesac is almost the opposite end of that spectrum, where there's a really good chance he just throws 6 innings, strikes out 5 or 6 guys, and maybe gives up an earned run or 2. And while that's not sexy, if he gets the win, that's 20 DraftKings points. And at that price point, I think that's really all you can ask for, especially on a slate like this, where again, pitching is a little lacking.
Yeah, so I actually think there's a decent argument to play both of these guys, and maybe Patrick Corbin, who I'm sure you were ready for me to get into. I don't need to talk about him too much. Like, I don't love him tonight. I actually think Hunter Green is a better play. Plesac is my preferred cheap guy. But if you just look at some of the prices on these hitters, like if you want to play Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Ronald Acuna, Shohei Ohtani, we don't know if he's in the lineup yet, but all these guys are in the 6,000s. If you want to play some of the expensive hitters no one else is going to play, you actually may need two cheap pitchers. I like the Green call. This is not going to be very surprising to you, but I think there's merit to a Cardinal stack or playing Hunter Green. Like the volatility is just so high for him. And I actually think there's a really good case to do either of those, just because of the range of outcomes. I think that's probably true for almost any Hunter Green start. Is you can consider using him because his stuff is so good, and also you can consider stacking against him because the blowout potential is so high. Like I think he's like the stereotype of high volatility for this year.
Yeah.
There's other guys we can name, like Robbie Ray is also pitching tonight, but I think Hunter Green is the most extreme example of that right now.
Yeah, I think Ray has sort of found himself the past couple months. He's still liable to give up a couple home runs from now and again, but I do think Ray is sort of more. He's not Justin Verlander, but he's not Garrett Cole, but he's kind of nearer to that class of pitcher where oftentimes the home runs they do give up tend to be solo home runs. Maybe they're trying to pound the strike zone a little bit more when no one's on base, et cetera, et cetera. But Hunter Green, home run per 9/2. You never really know what's going to happen with this guy. So I would agree. I think you could really take it either way, and you could probably do it both ways if you're playing enough lineups tonight on this particular slate.
So we'll get there soon enough, but I'm leaning with your side with Hunter Green more in terms of sports betting. The Reds are actually one of my favorite bets tonight, which I think will surprise no one who's listened regularly because I've been on the Reds something like 11 days in a row. We talked about them on Tuesday, and they actually beat the Yankees despite scoring no runs off Garrett Cole. They came back and won in the ninth. They just took 2 out of 3 from the Yankees. I think the Reds are just undervalued in general, and Hunter Green is one of the reasons why. But before we get to Sportsbook, I guess let's go over to the stacking options. Like I've already sort of mentioned, I like some of these expensive teams. I think the Dodgers, the Yankees, 2 of the top ones. But where are you looking for offense tonight?
I think the White Sox are probably my first go-to. I think we all have sort of a short list of pitchers who have been moderately successful in 2022, but we're just waiting for the blow up. And Devin Smeltzer is at the top of my list. This is someone who's got an ERA below 4, but his FIP is 5.5. He's not particularly good at, sometimes you see these guys who are outperforming their ERA or their FIP or their ERA estimators by a run and a half, but you look at their, contact stats and they're really good at generating soft contact or avoiding barrels. Smeltzer is not good at anything. He is a low strikeout pitcher. He has a high zone contact rate. When he gets hit hard, generally speaking. It's really just he's got a 230 BABIP and an 80% strand rate, and he's just humming along. And I think he's due for a night where he gives up really crooked numbers. And I think there's a good chance it's going to be tonight. The White Sox, as we've talked about a lot, the best hitting team of left-handed pitching in all of baseball. It's not even particularly close. They have a 129 WRC plus as a team that is way better than the second place team in the majors right now. Eloy Jimenez, not in the lineup tonight, which is unfortunate. He's pretty cheap. He would have been a nice source of pop. But, once you get past Tim Anderson and Jose Abreu and obviously Luis Robert, all above 5K, reasonably expensive, you do have some very cheap options here. I mean, Andrew Vaughn is an elite hitter of left-handed pitching. He's just 4,100. AJ Pollock has fantastic numbers against lefties this season, 3,300. You can kind of just start picking and choosing and filling out a lineup, and it doesn't even really end up hurting your wallet all that much. So I think they're probably my number one. I would also say, just in the sense of you're going to get some of these more notable offensive teams at a bit of a ownership discount just because so many people are paying up for pitching. The Jays are probably an interesting spot as well. I think left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths last night, but still obviously a team that could go off for 7 or 8 runs on any given slate. Zach Greinke, while a household name, very bad so far this season. So you could get people just kind of shying away from this game after maybe being burned on Thursday's slate. But I think you can kind of put them in the category of like the Dodgers, where just a team, if you can afford it, great, because probably not a lot of people are going to be able to afford that particular stack tonight.
Yeah, I like both of those calls. I mean, Eloy Jimenez at 3,700, it would have been really nice to have him in the lineup. So that might have been in contention for my favorite stack. Without him, I think they're still good, but not quite as good.
Missing something, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, AJ Pollock is fine. I guess that's his 1-for-1 replacement. So it's not that bad. Like, it's still a pretty good spot. I think the Twins in that game look good too. Like that. I'm not really a huge fan of Michael Kopech.
It's been bad lately. Been real bad lately.
And he's also another guy where like the walks can be high and the bullpen has had some issues. And I think the Twins are just like a pretty good fantasy offense. Like they hit for power. You can get a big upside game out of them occasionally. But yeah, the Blue Jays, I wonder, like, I have to think that this is the most popular expensive stack. Like they won't touch what the Pirates are going to be with ownership, and probably not the Rockies either. Coors Field against Jose Quintana is pretty appealing. But as far as the expensive teams, like they're still not that expensive, and it's Zach Greinke at home. So yes, some people are going to be a little scared off, but like this spot is quite obvious, and they're not as big of favorites as they were last night, but they're what, minus 350 or so.
Don't often see a minus. What did they get up to last night? Minus 410.
I think I saw. Yeah, I actually am one of the few people with a plus 320 Royals money line ticket from last night, and I'm on them again. But
that's almost just out of necessity. You have to bet. A team.
Well, it's just like
it's a baseball game.
Yeah, and these Royals backups are not that bad. Like Vinny P is a good hitter, and Bobby Witt is one of the best rookies, and like they actually have some decent players. And like we've talked about, the back end of the Toronto lineup, not that great. So yeah, it's just been slightly too long, but I still think people are rightfully interested in the Blue Jays for DFS. I think the Dodgers are preferable. It's kind of like what you were talking about with Smeltzer, just at a more extreme level with Patrick Sandoval, where he is pretty good, but his ERA is under 3 right now. He's like an average pitcher. Yeah. And the Dodgers are an incredibly good offense, arguably the best offense in baseball. And you're getting some key positions out of their stack too, with Turner at short and Will Smith at catcher. And like, yeah, the prices at the top are really high with Betts and Turner and Freeman, but Justin Turner's 4,100, Max Muncy left on left 4,400. Like even at that price, I don't think anyone's playing him. So it's really just the ownership bump that the Jays are going to have that puts me on a team like the Dodgers, where this is also very common for me to pick the Dodgers on slates where they're playing against like an okay pitcher.
Yeah. And
there's just other teams that are going to be prioritized. Like they're very expensive, but for that reason, I actually like them more. And we mentioned there's enough cheap pitching that I think you can make this work.
Yeah, I'm sort of curious talking about all these games, and we haven't mentioned Boston, New York yet. And if we saw anything from this series a week ago, it's that regardless of the pitching matchups, they tended to be very high scoring games. And I don't think this is exactly, Nate Eovaldi is a very good pitcher, but I think if we kind of, look at his rehab start, went 3 innings, 54 pitches, reasonably, can we expect like 75, 80 pitches tonight out of Eovaldi? I mean, this is probably going to be like a heavy Boston bullpen game. And I know they just got Garrett Whitlock back as well, so that could definitely help in that regard. But I'm not exactly blown away, let's say, by this pitching matchup. And these are two of the best offensive teams in baseball. Maybe if no one's really going there tonight, that's another place you could possibly look to for a high leverage stack that normally wouldn't be this ignored. I shouldn't say ignored, but maybe not. Normally wouldn't be this far down the pecking order.
Yeah, I like it too. I just shifted over to Sportsbook just to check on this to see what the strikeout prop on Eovaldi is, like what the odds expect him to be as far as pitch count. He's 4.5 plus 115 to the under. Like to my eye, that's a guy who's probably expected to throw like 65 to 75 pitches, something like that. Like with that line, I think that's roughly the expectation. Do you think that's...
I would say, this is right? Someone who's cleared 5 strikeouts, I believe, in 11 of his 12 starts this season. So
with a normal pitch count, it wouldn't be this low.
Yeah.
Even against the Yankees, because the Yankees are a really good offense, but they strike out at a normal rate. Like they're not a team that doesn't strike out. You can still get some strikeouts against them. So yeah, I think it does hurt the Yankees stack that Evaldi won't be out there most likely for a third time through the lineup. But yeah, I think again, this is like another team that just not that many people are playing. And it's just, you look at the pricing. I mean, they're so expensive that I think they almost have to be ignored, at least to a large extent. Like Judge will get some ownership no matter what, but as a stack, like I think this will be a very, very low owned team.
Yeah, even with the recent magic, I don't think a lot of people are still looking at Matt Carpenter at 5,200 and saying, I have to get this guy in the lineup. It still feels pretty weird.
Matt Carpenter, that I can't even believe that that's his price. Like, what are we talking about right now?
I think his OPS is like 1.2. So, I mean, I guess with the production he's had, but it is crazy. 1.3. I'm sorry, I undersold Matt Carpenter.
Yeah, he's gone over 20 fantasy points in 3 of his last 5 games. I mean, I guess that's a hot streak, at least in terms of fantasy production. And his real life numbers have been good. Okay, that's
wild.
Small sample size. Like, I have nothing else to say other than that. I mean, maybe the Yankees just knew exactly what they were doing when they signed him, but no, I mean, he's probably okay. Like, he's a good pinch hitter. That's really all he is right now.
It's been a wild month and a half, I would say. Everything the Yankees have touched has turned to gold this season.
Yeah, somehow. I'm sure that makes you feel good as a Blue Jays fan.
I probably feel better than Red Sox fans. I'll say that.
That's fair. All right, let's go over to Sportsbook. And I guess, do you want to start with this Blue Jays game? Like, the Royals are plus 280 now. They were 300 earlier today. Like, I don't know. I think that this line should be in the low 200s. Like, the Blue Jays should be sizable favorites, but this is too much. This is a baseball game, like you said. It's too high variance for this line.
I would agree. And look, just to play the I'm a pessimistic sports fan card, how could this go wrong? Alek Manoah has not been as sharp in his last 3 or 4 starts as he was to begin the season. Alek Manoah, when he has struggled, tends to struggle against left-handed hitters specifically. And with some of the guys missing from the Royals lineup, Whit Merrifield, Hunter Dozier, and with the guys they brought up, they are a very left-handed team right now. I believe they have 6 left-handed bats in their lineup tonight. So are they good left-handed bats? Not great. Vinny P is pretty good, but you know, there is maybe a little bit of like Tampa Bay raising right now in this lineup where you just go full handedness stack against the guy's weakness, and that might work out. And also with Zach Greinke, sometimes the Jays do struggle with the more soft tossing, sort of around the edges type pitchers. So again, this really just comes down to, should a baseball team in a high variance sport like baseball ever be minus 340 favorites? Probably not. Like, just so much can go wrong.
Yeah. And we saw it last night, so it's not that hard to envision it. Yeah, like I said, second day in a row for me on the Royals. They play again tomorrow, or is this the end of this? They only have a 2-game series?
No, I got 2 more. You got Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, we've got a 4. Yeah,
so knocking these off.
This is going to be 4 straight Royals bets for me, I think. We don't have the odds yet for the next 2 days, but I'm sure. I mean, it's just, if it's anything like this, it's not an argument to say the Royals should win. Like, if this game was close to pick 'em, the Blue Jays would be the best bet ever. It's just at this number.
It's a weird number, yeah.
It's just, like, you never see this, and the Royals still have some competent left-handed hitters, like you said. They're not great, but they're MLB level players at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, there really aren't too many games that I like tonight. Like, this is one of maybe 3 or 4. But I have to go back to a guy that I've been on like several times this year and last year and the year before, and that's Patrick Corbin with the Nationals against the Braves. And this line actually was in the 170s last night when it opened. It's all the way down to plus 150 now. I actually think it got lower than this before and then bounced back up. But like, how much better is Ian Anderson than Patrick Corbin? Like, I don't actually think there's much of a gap between these two guys. The Braves have the better offense, but the Nationals are at home. I'm not going to say this should be a pick'em game, but I think the Braves deserve to be like minus 130 or 140, and the line is just a decent amount higher than that. So, like, I think there's just value here, even though the Braves like should be road favorites. I just think this should be a small line, not a big line. That's
fair. I mean, I still have nothing positive to say about Patrick Corbin, but I also struggle to find something positive to say about Ian Anderson.
Right.
Like, I think this is a closer pitching matchup than most people would probably admit. You know, that Braves offense is scary, particularly against a left-handed pitcher, but Yeah, I look as an underdog flyer, I really have no problem with it. Like I said, Anderson's just had a really rough season. The strikeout stuff has almost completely vanished. He's not generating swings and misses anymore, and that's worrisome. The Nationals' offense hasn't looked amazing outside of Juan Soto the past week or so, but at the same time, Juan Soto is the caliber of bat that can carry an offense throughout a game. So you're kind of buying in at the right time with him when it comes to at least his potential to sort of lead this Nationals team to victory. And they've got all their big bats in there. They don't have many big bats, but all three. You know, Josh Bell's playing, Nelson Cruz is playing. So, yeah, I mean, look, they're underdogs for a reason, but it's not a terrible bet.
So the only other one that I really like in terms of money lines is the Reds, who we kind of already talked about. They are at plus 130. That's another one that's moved a bit since earlier today. But yeah, I don't see this as a super exciting day in terms of, at least to me, like not a lot that stands out. So before I start touring all these games for stolen base props, where else are you looking that I'm not looking?
I would say the two things I've already bet today. Well, this line has also moved, and we talked about this game a little bit already. I did take White Sox money line plus 120. I think it's plus 115 now. Mostly, again, just in a contest where Kopech could easily give up just as many runs as I'm perceiving Smeltzer will give up. This is the White Sox greatest strength, again, is hitting left-handed pitching. That is the key to their team. So to get a soft tossing lefty due for aggression, I think at plus money is a pretty nice bet. Even if you just want to bet the over in this game, as we talked about, with Kopech struggling lately, I think his ERA is hovering around 6 since the beginning of June. There are going to be runs scored in this contest. These are two of the better offensive teams in the American League, particularly the Twins, who just have a very deep lineup and maybe don't get as much credit as they should for that. Another bet that I do like, I think it's still at plus money, although I think it's also moved. It was plus 105. It might be plus 100 now. Going to outs recorded, Yu Darvish. Very quietly, Darvish has just been plugging away for the Padres this season. He's gone at least 6 innings in his last 9 starts. He's thrown over 100 pitches in 8 of those starts, and he's recorded more than 20 outs in 7 of those 9 starts, going up against a Diamondbacks team that is in no way all that notable. And Darvish in particular this season has been dominant at Petco Park. His home splits are outstanding. So I just think at plus money, guy who's had success pitching in a particular park against a team that I really don't have all that much respect for. I think Yu Darvish probably pitches deep into this game tonight. So I like it at plus 105.
All right, so I'm in on that game too for different reasons. There's a lot of stolen base stuff that looks very appealing. Before I go there, I don't want to freak anyone out. I'm going to get up for a second and make sure this computer doesn't die. Is there anywhere else that you want to look tonight besides the games you just mentioned?
I mean, I think you could also look back to the Pirates and Rockies games. Those are just some fun prop situations at Coors Field. I think Ha-Seong Kim, the problem with like a total bases prop at Colorado is they're so pumped up. I mean, if Chris Bryant, I think, is like minus 150 to go over 1.5 total bases, that's not really much fun. But Ha-Seong Kim has been the Padres' best hitter, has been the Padres' best hitter of left-handed pitching so far this season. You look at Madison Bumgarner going for the Diamondbacks tonight. The thing I like about this matchup, it's maybe me overthinking it a little bit, but Kim's biggest weakness since he's come over from the KBO has been hitting high velocity, which is something we see with a lot of these Korean hitters coming over. Bumgarner's not a high velocity pitcher anymore. So I really think this kind of fits into his profile. He was plus 110, I think, to go over 1.5 total bases. Gonna hit leadoff tonight for the Padres, 160 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. So I think that's a nice one. If you kind of just want to avoid like overpaying for all those like Coors Field props, but want to bet something on the West Coast, maybe just go to this game, take Kim at plus 115 now. It's even better to go over 1.5 total bases.
So we don't have lineups for either of these teams. Actually,
Diamondbacks came out.
We have the Diamondbacks.
Pretty much have the Raiders in there, I think.
So let's scroll down here and see what guys we have. Because Darvish has been one of my favorite pitchers to target for steals.
Very, very deliberate.
Yeah, and neither Padres catcher is all that great, I think, at preventing steals or Alfaro or Austin Nola. This guy, Esteury Ruiz, I guess we can't really he was north of plus 1,000 just a couple of days ago when he made his debut. Plus 265 now. I don't think that's a value anymore. But Dalton Varsho 10-1 against Darvish, I think is pretty appealing. And then I was hoping for a Perdomo line, but we don't have that one. So I think my two favorites here would be Varsho 10-1 and Grisham 11-1. It's kind of a weird thing against lefties. There's another game with a left-handed pitcher I really like tonight, but left-handed pitchers are harder to steal on for, I guess, obvious reasons. They're facing first base, so they can see the runners, harder to get a good jump on them. But they can still give up steals to third, and then also it's just like they're not perfect, even though you're left-handed. Guys can still get a good jump off of it. So actually, I think a lot of the steals off Bumgarner have been of third base. So I think we'll see if Grisham's in the lineup. It's a lefty-lefty matchup, and he has hit leadoff a couple times recently. I would guess he doesn't tonight. You're probably
I think they've sort of replaced him with Kim as the leadoff hitter against lefties, but he usually still hits 7th or 8th in those lineups.
Right. I think he'll make the lineup because Jerkson Profar is out. That's probably the main reason that he's playing every day now. So leadoff against righties, but yeah, he'll hit somewhere down in the order against lefties. But the game that I think is most exciting for stolen bases is the Mariners game with Robbie Ray. Now I'm going to go up here and find that one, but Leody Taveras is one of the better values I've seen this year. He's actually stolen a couple bases recently. And Robbie Ray, another lefty who gets the ball to the plate very slowly. And then the thing that we kind of briefly talked about before we came on is that when you have a high strikeout, high walk pitcher, if someone does walk, there's so little contact in the pitcher's arsenal that you have a lot of opportunities to steal a base because the ball's not being put in play as much. So you don't get a force out. You don't get, a single that advances the runners. There's a lot of pitches where nothing is happening. So there's more opportunities to steal. Taveras, I think, is a pretty good minor league base stealer. He hasn't done a ton in the majors, but more recently he's been running a lot. He's batting 6th today, which is actually quite a bit higher than he was before. He was batting 9th basically every time he played. So plus 600 might seem like it's a lot lower than what we're used to, but even still, I think this is far too high against Robbie Ray, who, like, if he gets on first against Ray, we're going to see him run. Maybe not first or second pitch or anything, but like I said, you have a lot of opportunities to steal against Ray because it's just so many pitches out of the strike zone, a lot of swing and misses, and there's just a long time between balls in play where you can have a chance. So those are probably my two favorite games to look at. A lot of these other lines are so much lower than I was hoping for. Like plus 500, Sam Haggerty, like that's a guy who was double digits for a while. I guess overall is like a concept, just something like for people who are like, what is he talking about? How are you finding these stolen bases? A lot of it is just like, look for the minor league speed guys like Ruiz on the Padres. And then the other is guys who don't steal much in general, but are facing a pitcher who allows them. Like, to me, I just don't think the pricing adjusts enough when someone is facing, let's say, a Noah Syndergaard. Like, yes, it will shift a bit for the matchup, but I don't think stolen bases move a lot for matchups. And that's why I tend to like them much more than home runs and strikeouts and total bases and all of that, because I think those are very matchup dependent. I think the algorithms do really well pricing those for the opposing pitcher and catcher. But for whatever reason, steals just don't seem they don't seem to care as much about who the opposing pitcher is. But like, that's everything, right? Like, that's the pitcher dictates most of what happens as far as steals are concerned.
Yeah, stolen bases are stolen off the pitcher. That's one of the oldest sayings in baseball. I agree. I think oftentimes you won't see a price move because of the starting pitcher, and it's so much more of the stolen base game than the individual player themselves.
So I guess we've covered most of what we want to. Like, there's not a lot of DFS picks that we like. There's not a lot of betting picks. I think we've been just more concise than normal with what's out there. I think like a lot of stuff just seems fair today. So should we take a look at futures again before we head out for the weekend?
We can look at one future first, which is the future of Monday, the home run derby.
Oh, yes.
Because DK just dropped, I believe this morning, we finally got some pricing for the home run derby.
Here we go.
Which is fixed. It's all very fun now. It's great. I feel like day of we'll probably get some like actual matchup bets and things like that, and those are a lot of fun. I would just say right now, one thing that sort of caught my eye, and you can even take it to the extent of like they've got the straight forecast bets where you can, have like Ronald Acuna over Kyle Schwarber in the final. I think that's plus 1,300. Don't hate it. But I think Ronald Acuna to win this thing at plus 600 is immediately what drew my eye. And I think a lot of people might avoid this one because his first round matchup is Pete Alonso. But I do think there's something to be said in these home run contests about having done this format before. It's a very unique format. And Acuna, of all the people who have almost beat Pete Alonso in these things, Acuna really almost beat Pete Alonso. Alonso needed like a walk-off as time expired home run to beat Acuna back in 2019. And, Alonso and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. really stole a lot of the thunder. That's what everyone remembers from that 2019 home run derby. Acuna hit 25 home runs in the first round. I mean, he is also the type of guy who is built for this sort of competition. So I do like Acuna at 6-1. I think the fact he hasn't hit a lot of home runs this season in real play is maybe affecting this number, as is just the matchup with Alonso. But if he gets past Alonso in the first round, I think it might just be a clear path for the guy. So I actually kind of like 6-1. I know these are stupid bets, but I don't hate it. I really don't.
They don't have to be stupid. I mean, if there's an edge, there's an edge. Like I thought that Pete Alonso was well underpriced when he won. It's harder to know if you're right. Like, it's harder to quantify.
Oh yeah. I mean, sometimes you turn it on and you realize like, oh, Ronald Acuna has chosen his 85-year-old grandfather to throw these pitches. And you're like, damn it. God damn it. So, you take these bets with a grain of salt, but
for sure.
I will say no other sports are happening that night. So, you might as well bet on the home run derby.
Yeah. No, I think it's a decent call. Like, the odds on Alonso are so low, and even Schwarber to a lesser extent, that like, yes, they're the deserving favorites, but there's just not enough there in terms of odds to take them. I think Acuna probably, I mean, Soto is compelling too. The one guy I would say you definitely can't take is Albert Pujols. Like,
well, that's the interesting thing about Schwarber is
did win the 3-point contest, so I guess anything can happen. But
yeah,
Pujols at only 19-1. Can he really have any chance to win?
So I think that what we've seen from this contest, and again, I think the format is so key to this, and having to do it a couple times and learning from it. I think Alonso did this really well in 2021. We saw this with Juan Soto last year. And again, Juan Soto, I think he's probably still 19. He's the Jason Tatum of Major League Baseball. Soto even got tired in his second round matchup last year. Like, this is a very physically daunting sort of thing to do, to hit this amount of home runs in a limited amount of time and take this many swings. This isn't the old format where Albert Pujols could sit and with the bat on his shoulder and take 10 consecutive pitches if he was feeling a little tired. Like, you have to swing. This is a young man's home run derby. And I think Schwarber's number is kind of interesting, or even I believe he's just like plus 120 to make the final. They're basically giving him a bye. Like, there is no way Kyle Schwarber is losing in the first round to Albert Pujols. It just like, I don't think Pujols cares all that much. And I just don't think he has the endurance to get through a full round of this.
What do you think the line will be for? Because the head-to-head line will be up at some point. Yeah. What do you enter, like minus 400 or higher than that for Schwarber for that head-to-head?
Minus 350, minus 400 probably seems right around that territory. So again, like in a contest that is so random, in a contest that is dictated by so many weird things, there's a reason that when you bet on this thing, you start being like, hey, they're not keeping track of the timing properly. That guy threw a pitch after the, like, it's ridiculous. But in an environment with so many variables, if you're given, I don't want to say a definite, but an almost definite in that Kyle Schwarber will beat Albert Pujols in the first round. I mean, that's a pretty big boon to Kyle Schwarber. We're basically at plus 120 to make the finals. Now you just need him to win one round. So I don't, it's not a long number, but I also don't necessarily hate Schwarber just to make the finals.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, he does get Albert Pujols, so that's a huge, huge boost for him. I mean, I didn't even realize till we just pulled this up. Like, I was sort of paying attention when they announced the people that were going to be in it. I didn't realize Pujols actually was, like, I knew he was in the All-Star game for like the, I don't know, like the thing they did with Dirk and D.
Yeah, the ceremonial thing. Yeah.
Ceremonial All-Star appearance. I didn't realize he was also getting a ceremonial home run derby appearance.
He was like the fifth
all-time great, but still
to say he was going to do it. It was very like, he was on board before Julio Rodriguez. Like, I kind of thought it was like, oh, we've got 7. We need an 8th. Let's go get Albert. No. This was, we're getting Albert to do this thing.
Yeah. I mean, this is like the weakest field of all time, not just because he's in it, but there's so many great home run hitters. Like Aaron Judge Vlad could be in this again. Yeah. There's like Austin Riley's had a great season. Buxton's been really good. Like this is almost like the dunk contest now, where Alonso and Schwarber, and then Soto and Acuna to a lesser extent, and then the drop off is just crazy. Like we're missing so many of the best home run hitters, and this used to be an event where all the best guys were in it.
I mean, it's fun to see Julio in there. I think the 2019 field is probably going to be tough to top, and 2021 was really great with Ohtani as well at Coors Field. Yeah, I mean, look, Jose Ramirez, great player. Not really excited to see him hit home runs. Seager, the same thing. Albert's whatever, it's a story. I would say, though, the top 5 guys I'm pretty excited to watch.
So we got one question from YouTube chat from Anthony. He says, what teams would you consider taking the over on? I guess that's probably team totals for tonight. I think it's really, like, for me, it's the teams we talked about. Like the Reds, I think, are a little undervalued with their healthy lineup. Do you think the White Sox really, like, that's still your go-to for?
I think they might be at 5.5, and the Twins might be at 4.5. So I might be more invested in the Twins there, but I don't necessarily hate either path.
And then for me also, I mean, maybe
Royals is 2.5.
I'm just okay. 2.5 on the Royals. Yeah, that seems.
Although yesterday it was 2.5 at plus money. Today it's 2.5 at minus 130.
Okay.
So I think the sportsbook's learning a little bit.
Yeah, that's for the best. I mean, the line yesterday was just crazy. So before we wrap, I'm just kind of scanning through team futures again. With the Orioles to make the playoffs now, you're only getting 10-1. Like, I almost want to lay the 35-1 on the no. Is that totally outrageous? They're not
just
making
so strange. They're not going to make the playoffs. I mean, again, we talked about this on Tuesday, and just to sort of drive home the point, Ken Rosenthal, I think it was, or maybe it was one of the other non-passing baseball talking heads. I don't know. They all kind of blend together. Somebody tweeted out a story today that was basically like, the Orioles still might not trade Trey Mancini, but if they do, they're trading a great guy. And it's like, that's the point. The Orioles are still actively talking about trading some of their best hitters because they do not care about this season. They don't want to make the playoffs. They're fine to keep winning if it's what happens, but they're going to trade dudes at the deadline. Their bullpen is way too good for them to not be cherry picking and getting some nice assets in return. They're going to sell parts. So, and they're also just not as good as Tampa Bay, Boston, and Toronto. So, or Seattle for that matter. So yeah, they're not making the playoffs.
Yep. Totally agree. Okay. So Spencer Strider, like, I think maybe the last thing to touch on was plus 200. We both kind of like that on Tuesday. Now it's 155. He had kind of a mediocre start against the Mets.
That was okay.
Mediocre by his standards. He had 8 strikeouts, but he only went 4 2/3 innings. I think it was 2 runs, 1 earned, something like that. I kind of still like plus 155. Like,
yeah,
the narrative is going to be there that he's been better than Harris and he's leading the Braves to the playoffs, regardless of whether or not they win the division. I think he's going to be minus odds within another week or two, probably.
And I would even think about this. I mean, we started the show sort of flippantly talking about Jack Sawinski, who was just sent down by the Pirates. I believe Jack Sawinski is second or third on the Pirates in home runs. Like, I'm not saying they're going to send O'Neal Cruz down, but the Pirates just proved that they will still try to manipulate service time if they get a chance to. And Sawinski was batting below 200, so you can kind of justify sending him back down to the minors. If they just took a guy who had 13 home runs for their terrible offense and sent him to AAA, if O'Neal Cruz has 2 bad weeks, he might be back in the minors. So again, there just isn't that guy sitting behind Spencer Strider that I'm like, oh, he's going to catch up. I just don't think that guy exists.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I guess Michael Harris has not hit that well of late. Like, he was up to a 320 average or so, and now he's down into the 280s. Like, his season is good, but it's not special in the way that Strider's is. I'm sure he's going to be approaching rookie strikeout records and stuff like that.
Even for like the reigning World Series champions, a national team in a huge U.S. market like the Braves are, I just don't feel like people are really talking about Michael Harris. Like, I don't. Again, these are kind of narrative-based awards, and I just don't hear his name all that much. And you know, that's somewhat on us, I guess. But yeah, it's just the fact of the matter.
All right, I just wanted to pull this up before we go because we got to leave in just a second. But Shohei Ohtani overtaking Aaron Judge for AL MVP, and significantly so at minus 105 with Judge at plus 165. Overreaction or not? And then we'll say goodbye to everybody after this.
I don't think it is. I mean, I don't want to make too much of Judge's recent downturn because it's not been that big a downturn. He's still hitting home runs. He's just striking out a little bit more and not hitting for the same average he was early in the season. But again, I just don't know. Aside from, voter fatigue, which I don't think usually takes place after 1 year, although this could be special circumstances with Ohtani. But, this is the exact problem we started talking about last season, which was if Ohtani just keeps having some version of this season from 2021 over and over and over again, regardless of its maybe the pitching's a little bit better than the hitting, et cetera, how is he not the most valuable player in baseball? He's two valuable players.
Yeah.
So maybe just because, like, if this gets to a point where Judge is maybe like plus 200 or anything above that, maybe you start looking at Judge just because he's from the baseball market. He'll have such a media presence behind this. There will be people who will just be like, oh, well, if Judge hits 60 home runs and doesn't win MVP, like, we should just make Shohei Ohtani the MVP every season. Like, what is this? And this will become a storyline where people will be mad at Shohei Ohtani for how good he is. So maybe there will become a point where Judge is just a value play because he's going to have ridiculous numbers. But I mean, this is Ohtani's to lose. How could it not be?
No, I think that's well said. Like, I've changed my tune a bit in the last just 3 days or so with Ohtani racking up, 12 strikeouts against the Astros. Yeah. Like, another incredible start from him. I would have thought Judge should have been the favorite like 4 days ago, but not anymore. To your point, yes, I think there will. Maybe it's now. I think Ohtani should be favored, but plus 165 does seem kind of long for Judge. And also, it really is a two-man race now with Alvarez going on the IL, at least for now. Like, he come back and go on another tear. But it's interesting to watch this because it's shifted quite a bit over the course of the season.
Yeah.
But okay, that's going to do it for us. Good stuff as always, Gary, and hopefully we covered enough different topics for everybody that tuned in. Appreciate all of you watching. And tomorrow, just one Madden game to call out. There's Panthers-Packers at noon. Nothing going on tonight on the Madden front, so you have that tomorrow. Thanks for watching, everyone. Good luck with all your DFS lineups, all your bets, and see you later.